Welcome back to A Case of the Jill. Today I wanted to talk to you a little bit about overtraining. Overtraining is kind of the elephant in the room behind all of the stuff that I've been talking with you about up to this point. If you've been watching my channel for a little bit, you know the short story is that I am an ultrarunner who made some bad dietary choices and ended up with amenorrhea, and also eventually ended up majorly overtrained and had to take 2 months off of running just to kind of reset, and I am now trying to build back from both of those things. Was it that I was overtrained and then lost my period, or was it that I lost my period and then became overtrained? Like, what's the relationship between those two things? And I can tell you from my personal experience that I did not lose my period until my mileage went over a certain point. So I was kind of fine, even though I was running, let's say for me, and again, remember, this is going to be different for everyone, but for me, I was running in the high 30s, low 40s per week, and I was fine. I was still getting a period. But as soon as I went over that 40, 45 miles per week mark was when things started to get really irregular. After that point, when I started to go into the 50s, 60s, 70s, and even eventually into the 80s, is when I had absolutely no period at all. It took me about 3 years to get from the point where I had raised my mileage enough to be training for ultramarathons, lost my period, and then got to the point where I started to approach what one would call overtraining. Overtraining is one of these weird things where it seems to be a syndrome. It can be different for men and women. It can be different for all different types of people. I think there's probably a spectrum or a continuum of symptoms and situations that would suggest that a person is veering toward overtraining. The best way to understand it is to really know your own body. But if you're not sure, or if you're doing what I was doing, which was saying, I'm not sure, but you actually know that you're kind of headed in that direction, today I'm just going to talk about some of the things that happened to me, some of the symptoms that I had that made me know, yeah, that's probably where you're at. You know, I'm always honest. If you ask the question, does this XYZ symptom mean that I'm probably overtrained? You know the answer. So we're not stupid. We're very highly intelligent, well-trained athletes. We know that we're going down a weird path. It's just that we have a really hard time listening to our own voice. So if you can't listen to yourself like I couldn't listen to myself, I'm going to tell you some of the things that I experienced that really, in retrospect, and also while I was going through it, if I really listened to my heart, which I didn't do all the time, let me know that I was very, very, very strongly headed toward a situation where I was overtrained. Okay, so overtraining very quickly, the body becomes unable to recover in order to adapt to the training stress. So for example, if you go for a 15-mile run on a Monday and you give yourself a few days off afterwards, the next time you go out and run, your body is going to have adapted to that new training stress. It's going to have built new tissues, new muscle to make you better able to tackle that distance or longer distances the next time you go out. The problem comes when you have too many of those difficult training efforts too close together and the body doesn't have a chance to recover and adapt to those changes. And instead of building up, you end up breaking down. So, what were some of my symptoms? Okay, first, the major thing was fatigue. I mean, I was exhausted. I was running 60, 70, sometimes 80 miles a week. And again, it's different for everyone. You're gonna hear me say this over and over. I'm a broken record. For some people, 80 miles per week. For me, it was too much. For other people, maybe 80 miles a week is a sweet spot and you really have to get up into the hundreds to start feeling these symptoms. It could be that your sweet spot is 30 and when you get into 40 miles per week, you're gonna have problems. Again, it's totally individual. Absolutely, it was that 3 o'clock slump, but I would be driving to work, especially last year, and I'd be driving to work in the morning and I'm like, asleep at the wheel, totally. I would call my mom on my way to work half the time just to keep me awake. There was definitely a feeling of oppressive fatigue, kind of that feeling of, you know, something sitting on your chest holding you back, that kind of fatigue that was getting me. One of the biggest symptoms that I had that I think people overlook a lot, especially as women, we overlook this symptom because we think it can be attributed to 9 million other things, which it can be, by the way, is night sweats. This is for real. For real, the struggle was real. I mean, night sweats like you went into a swimming pool. The sheets, your pajamas, everything around you is completely drenched. You feel disgusting. You wake up in a pool of sweat. And I was like that night after night. I can promise you this, it was directly related to my training load. So the more miles per week I was running and the more difficult those miles per week were, I was absolutely sweating more in the middle of the night. I'm not a doctor, but I can tell you that night sweats can be related to many other things. So if you are experiencing night sweats, please do see a doctor. There are many other things that it can be an indicator of. But when we're talking about the constellation of symptoms that are within the realm of overtraining, night sweats can definitely be something that raises a flag for you. Another major problem for me was hypoglycemia. I sort of knew my body well, so I knew that if I would start running in the morning, I would need maybe about an hour and 20 to an hour and 30 minutes before I would need my first either gel or food. And then after that, it would be every 45 to 60 minutes. But I started getting this massive bonk right around 45 minutes, no matter what. I would feel like this pain kind of in my forehead, and my eyeballs would feel really heavy, and it was hard to concentrate. I would be tripping all over the place down the trail, and it was very, very hard for me to focus. It was very much happening here. And I don't know how to describe it except to say that my brain knew that it needed to have some food. The brain needs sugar, it needs glucose. If it doesn't feel that it has enough glucose, it is going to shut things down. And so absolutely that makes perfect sense. The hypoglycemia also showed up in the middle of the night. Yay! So I wasn't getting any sleep because I was going through this crazy night sweats thing, but also I would wake up in the middle of the night with my blood sugar on the floor. I would feel this hunger that I don't know how to describe. It was a hunger down into the core of my soul. This is dramatic, I understand. So I would get up in the middle of the night and I would eat stuff. Nothing huge. I wasn't binge eating at night. I would take a couple of spoonfuls of almond butter. I would grab some nuts. Remember, at this time I was still eating fairly low carbohydrate, quite low carbohydrate. I was eating more fats and protein, so I was going for the nut butters, the almond butters, maybe half a Kind bar or something like that in the middle of the night. Anything to kind of put out the fire in my stomach and just make my stomach feel like there was something in it, and I would try to go back to sleep after that. But that horrible, sweaty, shaky, endless hunger feeling would wake me up almost every night. Okay, this one is weird, but it's also the one that plagued me. It was the most infuriating thing that ever happened. After a hard effort, and I mean more than a hard training effort, a race effort. It didn't really happen around the 50K mark, but anything after that, it would happen. I would be fine for about 24 hours after the finish, and then all of a sudden, boom, my body would swell. And I mean swell. My abdomen, my hips, my butt, my thighs, my calves, my feet would just swell up with so much water. I would take pictures of my feet the next day, or my ankles, my legs, and send them to my friends, and we would laugh. But it was awful. I know now that part of that is from aldosterone, which is a stress hormone that comes out when the body is under a ton of stress. I actually had to have a set of clothing that I could wear in the days after a race. I literally could not fit my body into my normal clothing at that time. It would take a full 7 to 10 days for that to go away. I was a bitch. No, I'm serious. I was an absolute bitch. Irritable doesn't begin to describe. I had the worst mood swings ever. I would get so angry and upset over certain things. My temper was super short. I had absolutely no patience. I had swollen glands all the time, like in my neck. I always felt like I was on the verge of a cold, even though I never really got one. My legs felt like they were dead. My legs felt like someone took hammers to them, and I talked about this in the video where I told you guys that I had to eventually take 2 full months off of running. I would come up the stairs and my legs would feel like the muscles were squeezing, and the fatigue feeling was just massive and so uncomfortable. A really important part of this too is the mental component. It wasn't fun anymore. I love running so much. I love being on the trails. I love any kind of running. It gives me such joy that I cannot even describe. Well, I don't have to describe. You're watching this video, so chances are you know how good it feels. When I was going through this overtraining stuff, I dreaded a run. I didn't want to. I forced myself. I pushed myself to get out there. One really big telltale sign for me was that I found myself needing to run with music or with a podcast. And I am a person who never runs with an iPod. I do not listen to music. I don't listen to anything while I run. So finding myself needing music or needing a podcast to get through a run, for me, again, personally, for me, this was a big indicator that I was trying to blunt the experience for myself. I was trying to somehow distance myself from the actual experience of the run. I'm going to continue to talk more about overtraining in a few more videos. For right now, I just wanted to introduce the topic. I would really love it if you have any questions or your own personal experiences about overtraining that you comment below. I definitely want to do a couple more videos on this topic because I think it's really important. I think there's so many ultra runners, runners in general, even CrossFitters, bodybuilders, all kinds of people going through this experience right now. And I have my theories as to why, but I'll save those maybe for another video. I hope that you enjoyed this today. Please like and subscribe to my channel, and I will see you again soon. Thanks for watching.